Hello BookTube, Sarah here and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reviews for December the 22nd through the 28th. Almost at the end of the month, only a few days left, you guys. Exciting, isn't it? Whole new year, whole new decade, and all new books. But we are still in December and I have 6 books that I finished over the last week that I want to share with you guys. So let's jump in and get started. So the first book, this was probably my favorite. This was my favorite book of the week. And it was We Met in December by Rosie Curtis. This is what I would consider to be a chick lit novel. The narrators on this were Jessica Preddy and Oliver Walker. This came out in 2019. It is a real new release, but this isn't one that I had as an ARC or anything like that. This is just a new release I heard a lot of people talking about. Goodreads average star rating of 4.34 stars. I gave this one 5 stars, you guys. I loved it. For my challenges, this was for my December Triple RC, the Romance Readers Reading Group on Goodreads. For number 3, which was the Featured Author Challenge, now Rosie Curtis wasn't the featured author, but one of the other prompts was to read a humorous book. And the reason I picked this one is because a lot of people were talking about how funny it was, and that for that challenge, I originally had a different book picked, and I was using the Audible Escape package, which I don't have anymore. We got rid of it for financial reasons, and so I needed to find something else. And I found this book on Scribed, so super exciting. So anyway, this is the story of Jess and Alex, and this story was utterly delightful. It's not a romance. It is a romance, but it's not a romance. It's more about these two characters living their lives over the course of an entire year. So it takes place in London, and they meet like a day in December, as it says, and they are both renting rooms in a house of another mutual friend. I think Becky or Bex is the friend's name. So anyway, they're renting this house, or renting rooms in this house, and you know, Jess kind of really likes him from the first time she meets him, but the girl who owns the home is like, no inner-house relationships. Like, it just causes too much controversy and stuff like that. So then the story follows the two of them over the course of the year, and eventually at the end we do get our happily ever after, but that's not, it is, but it isn't what the book is about. It's kind of hard to describe. Highly enjoyable. I really liked it on audio. Both narrators did a brilliant job, and I thought it was a ton of fun. If you like these kind of stories, I highly recommend it. I think I mentioned in one of my Friday reads when I was talking about this one, it's very British. And I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, the wording that is used and the phrases that are used, and it was funny. It wasn't every page you were laughing out loud, but there were a lot of great moments that made you laugh or made you giggle. And it was just overall a really cheerful and fun story. I think I labeled it as a holiday read, but it does not primarily, like, it takes place over the course of an entire year. So you do get Christmas at the beginning and Christmas at the end, but during the middle, of course, you're getting the rest of the year. So really delightful. I highly recommend it. It's a clean romance as well, or a clean story. I think there might be a little bit of swearing in it, but if there is, it's very minimal, and there is no adult content in it. So it was absolutely delightful, and I loved it. The next one that I finished was one of my Back to My Childhood books, and that was Stacey's Emergency by Ann M. Martin. This is, of course, a middle grade fiction novel. It is Babysitter's Club book number 43. I'm so happy to be back into these books, you guys. This was originally published in 1991. Goodreads average rating of 3.70 stars, and I gave it 3.5 stars. In this one, there's been a lead up to this book over the last bunch of books that, you know, Stacey isn't feeling well and blah, blah, blah. And then in this one, she ends up hospitalized for a few weeks. And in amongst all that, she's also, of course, still kind of dealing with her parents' divorce and how she's being put in the middle, and how even though she's in hospital, her mom and dad won't be in the room together at the same time, and she just kind of wants them to be a family. I don't think she really wants them to get back together per se, but more to be able to be civil to each other, and they're not even at that point yet. So yeah, this was a cute story. I mean, I never know how to rate these ones because I am an adult now reading books that are meant for middle schoolers or middle graders, but and this was a much beloved series from my childhood. So, you know, again, it's hard to rate them. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I'm enjoying rereading through the series. The next one that I finished was Christmas at the Little Knitting Box by Helen J. Rolfe. and this is another chick lit novel. The narrators on this one were Andy Ackerman and Andy Inglis. This one was published in 2016. A Goodreads average rating of 4.23 stars. I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. For my romance book bingo, or my holiday book bingo, excuse me. This was for the one with lights on the cover. And at the end of this video, I'm going to put up my holiday book bingo, how I've done so far, because I think I'm almost done. I think I've got two more spots to fill in. So you guys will see that next week when I do my my weekly reviews. I will have the full, fingers crossed, I'll have the full bingo board complete. But yes, this one was for lights on the cover. So 3.5 stars. I didn't absolutely love this story, and sorry for the lighting coming in and out. It's because of my tablet, I think. So I didn't absolutely love this one. I don't know exactly what it was, but this story just wasn't one that really grabbed me. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't amazing. It wasn't one of my favorites. So essentially in this story, this is the story of Cleo and Dylan. And Cleo owns a knitting store in the West Village in New York City. And at the beginning of the novel, she gets a letter that her store has been sold. Essentially, this block of stores, like in her area, have all been sold. And turns out that Dylan is the one who sold them. He used to own them and now he sold them. They meet completely by accident at a mutual friend's party. And of course, it turns out that this is the situation, that this is how they have a bit of a history, if you will. And Dylan is a single dad to 2 kids, and he's dealing with his ex-wife named Prue, who wants to get back together. And Cleo is trying to decide what she wants to do with her life, whether she is going to reopen the store elsewhere. You know, rents are very, very high in New York. Whether she's going to go back to England. So this, of course, takes place in New York City, but she is originally from England. And yeah, so that's kind of the basis of the story. And I think part of what it was for me is that this story has been done so much. You know, I mean, You Got Mail. You Got Mail is the movie that I think a lot of these are kind of based off of, if you will. Where, you know, we have a small town, like a small store owner, an independent kind of business owner, and the bigger, you know, businessman comes in to take over or sell the store or put them out of business. It's all along the same lines. You know what I mean? And I read a book to this effect last year, which was Santa something. It was by Nancy Nangle. Dear Santa is the one that I read. I think that they renamed it for this year and they gave it a different cover, but that's another kettle of fish. So I read that one last year, which was the same idea with a small town, you know, she owns a Christmas store and this bigger Christmas store is coming in. And I've read another one, or I've heard of another one. And, you know, this tends to be a very standard plot line for especially Christmas books. But the writing on this was really good. I liked the characters. There are more in this series, but I think it's more of a companion series. This is the first book. I don't think I even wrote it down here, but it's the first book in the, I can't remember the name of the series, but it's not listed as a series on Goodreads. It's not listed as a series on Fiction Database, but it's listed as a series on Audible, of all places. So, and I believe all of these are available as part of the Audible Escape package. That's originally where I was going to listen to this from, but I ended up being able to grab a copy on Scribd, which was great. So that's where I listened to it from. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a horrible book. It was it was a clean romance. It had very minimal, if at all, swearing. It was a very sweet story. It's been done. And I don't think that this was the best execution of the plot line. Mainly I think because I found both Dylan and Cleo to be very wishy-washy, especially Dylan. Like, you know, should I go back to my ex-wife because we need to be a family? Or, you know, I kind of want to have a relationship with Cleo. It's like he couldn't decide and couldn't kind of, you know, and not that he was stringing anybody along per se, but I don't know. He was just really wishy-washy and, you know, he needed to make a better decision. So, or a quicker decision, I should say. Because, of course, again, it is a happily ever after. This one is a bit more romance than We Met in December. But it's still a lot of focus on Cleo and her store, and she hires this girl to help out. And I mean, again, I'm a knitter. So that's the part of me that that's what I really loved about this story, was the amount of knitting in it, and how she owns a knitting store in the West Village and talks about all these different yarns and patterns and stuff. So that part of it was really, really fun. And I did like it for that. So if you're a knitter, you might really enjoy this one. The next one that I finished, another great book that I read this week, you guys, A Madness of Sunshine by Nalini Singh. This is it's kind of hard what to exactly label this as, but I looked on Goodreads and most people are saying it's a romantic suspense. And yes, I can absolutely see that. This was published in 2019. It just came out this month in December. Average rating on Goodreads is 4.05 stars, guys. I gave it 4.5 stars. For my December Triple RC, this was my Reader's Choice book. And of course, a special thanks to NetGalley and Berkeley for sending me an e-art copy of this book to review. This is a departure for Nalini Singh. This is something new that I think she's dipping her toes in the water, and I think she did a really good job. Now, she is primarily known for her paranormal romance and lesser known for her contemporary romance. Her contemporary romance is where I know her from, which is why I think I had no problem going from that to this, because this is still grounded in reality. Whereas if, in my opinion, you were a huge fan of her paranormal and now you're coming into a romantic suspense, it's a little bit of a bigger leap. Does that make sense? Because I have heard other people review this book, and I know that some people were just not impressed with it. They found the pacing to be very slow. And I will agree with that. Yes, it was a very slow moving story, but it was well done. And I think what helped it was the fact that in a 350-page book, there were 66 chapters. So the chapters are relatively short, and you kind of fly through it. Like, you know what I mean? I think that's what helps pick up the pace a bit. And it was actually really well done by the author, in my opinion. That, you know, she used that element to make the story move a little bit faster. So I don't want to talk too much about what this story is about. I went into this story completely blind. I only knew it was by Nalini Singh, and I only knew that she was dipping her toes into the more suspenseful, you know, subgenre of romance. So this is about a woman by the name of Anna. It's actually, she's got a longer name, but I will, my ignorance on this one, that a lot of the names used in this book, in my opinion, would be more difficult for me to pronounce. The entire story takes place on the west coast of New Zealand, in this tiny little town called Golden Cove, and a lot of the names are more indigenous names, or more names, local names, if you will, and so she gets called Anna. And the love interest, or the police officer in this story, his name is Will. So Anna has a background. She has a past, like most of us do. And her husband just passed away. And there's more to it than that, but I don't want to give too much away. And she is back in Golden Cove to kind of lick her wounds and, you know, figure out what she wants to do with her life. And then a local girl ends up going missing. And that's all I'm going to tell you. So from there, the story kind of goes. The descriptions of the town itself and the area, like the foliage and the terrain and the ocean, it was so well written. This story was so atmospheric. I loved it so much. You really felt like you were there. And I got to this point while I was reading it that I was actually Google searching images so I could see what the author was seeing when she was writing this. Because Nalini Singh is from New Zealand. I believe it's New Zealand. And so she was writing for her own location. And, you know, the fact that it was this very, very small dot on a map town. It wasn't like a bigger city like Christchurch in New Zealand, where the characters do go in this story as well. But it was good. If you are a fan of Nalini Singh's contemporary or her paranormal, I totally recommend that you pick this one up. It did keep me guessing, you know, up until the end. And then when you kind of get the reveal of who and what's happening, you kind of go, why didn't I figure that out? Because even the characters, you know, you're kind of following along with them, and they're kind of, is it this person? And then you're like, oh, maybe. And even the characters are having doubts, and you know what I mean? Like, you really feel like you're drawn into the story, and that you are a townsperson who lives in this town watching the story unfold in a way. And yeah, it was really good. It also has to deal with hikers that went missing, you know, many, many years earlier when our main character Anna was in high school. So yeah, really, really fascinating. And it also, the one thing I wanted to mention is that I found when I was reading this at certain points, I felt anyway, like you got those like fingers up the back of your neck like that. You're making your hair stand on end. Like not, oh my gosh, I'm so creeped out, but just that unsettled feeling as you were reading it. And that's really, it's not easy to do that, I think, in a book. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I highly, highly recommend it. The only reason it didn't get 5 stars was because it was a bit of a slower pace. But again, I think she counteracted that very, very well with having the shorter chapters. The next one that I finished, just looking at my time here, sorry, was Miss Lottie's Christmas Protector by Sophie James. This is a historical romance novel, of course. It is book number 1 in the Secrets of a Victorian Household series. Harlequin Historical number 1468. This was originally published in 2019. This one came out in November of 2019. Average rating on Goodreads of 3.71 stars. I gave it 3.5 stars. And for challenges, this was my second to last 40 Years of Harlequin book that you guys picked for me. So thank you again all so very much for picking this for me. So this is the story of Lottie and Jasper. And Lottie is running a home for, I guess, women who need help, who are destitute, who are on the streets, who may have become pregnant outside of marriage, who essentially need help. It's a halfway house for women, essentially. And one of the women kind of in her care has gone missing. And they think she's been taken by a less than noble person who is going to use her as a prostitute, essentially. It's a pimp, essentially, is like who this person who's taken her is going to be. And she is enlisting the help of their old friend, a man by the name of Jasper King, who was friends with her sister. Not friends, they courted briefly, very, very briefly. And so she's kind of seeking out his help to help her find this girl. And in the meantime, Jasper's kind of dealing with his own thing. He had kind of had a bit of a wild streak for a number of years and got into a bit of trouble. And he ended up hurting his leg, and he walks with a limp. So he's dealing with that and, you know, the psychological aspect of that as well. He spent a lot of time during when he was recuperating from this injury to his leg on opium and morphine. So he's dealing with a former drug habit. And, you know, there's kind of a lot going on here, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, 3.5 stars is a better than average rating from me. This was great for what it was. It was a Victorian novel, which you don't see a lot in the historicals. Typically, they always move to the Regency period, but this was delightful, especially at the holidays. You know, there's something about a Victorian Christmas that just makes me smile and makes me happy. But yeah, with the whole mystery aspect of this one, it was really, really well done. I've read this author before. She is a favorite of mine, and I absolutely am going to be continuing on with the series because the next book is about her sister, Lottie's sister, and then the last book, I think, is about their brother. And then I think there's a 4th book, if I looked correctly on Goodreads. There is a 4th book, and I think it actually deals with their mum, I think. Don't quote me. I have to go back and check. But yeah, it was really delightful. If you like a good Victorian romance, this one does get hot and spicy, you know, as a lot of these in the Harlequin imprints tend to do, or as a lot of the more modern historical romances tend to do. Really enjoyed it, though. Great, great read. And the last book that I finished this week was one that I had not planned on reading. So I was actually down to like my last audiobook, and I still had like 6 or 7 days left in the month. And I'm like, I just wanted to pick up a random audiobook, but I didn't know what I wanted to pick up. So I was kind of, you know, looking around. And then on, was it Friday? Last Friday, I got the email from Smart Bitches Trashy Books. I get their emails every Friday of all the ebook deals. And this book came up on deal, and I'm like, I remember hearing about this book 2 years ago, and I really wanted to read it. And I was going to buy it, and I'm like, no, you know, I'm not going to read it right now. Don't spend the $2. I know it's only $2, but don't spend the $2. And then I couldn't get it out of my head. So on Sunday, I ended up doing a search for the Toronto Public Library on Overdrive, and they didn't have it available. They had it, but they were both on, like, they had holds on them. And then I checked Scribd, and Scribd had it on audio, and I'm like, yes. Because this year, this is the first year that I was not going to have a Christmas Carol book to read. I either read a retelling, I read a reimagining, or I read the book itself. Last year I read Mr. Dickens and His Carol, which I loved. I think the year before I actually read A Christmas Carol. So every year for about the last 5 or 6 years, I've always read something to do with A Christmas Carol. And this is the one for this year, and I loved it. The Afterlife of Holly Chase, and this was by Cynthia Hand. This is a YA fantasy novel of all things, and I loved it, you guys. Me, who is not A, a fantasy reader really, or B, really a YA reader. This was narrated on audio by Aaron Spencer. This was published in 2017. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.01 stars. I gave it 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one. I will be honest and say that this one probably only had about a 3.5 star rating from me. Even though I really enjoyed it, it was a solid 3.5 star rating from me. So this is the story about a girl by the name of Holly Chase. And she is visited by, at the very beginning of the book, she gets visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Exactly as the story of Christmas Carol goes. And she is visited by them, and she pretty much laughs them off. Literally laughs them off. And is like, you guys aren't real. This is nothing. I'm not changing my ways. Blah, blah, blah. And then she ends up dying. Which is true to A Christmas Carol story, that if Scrooge didn't repent and learn the errors of his ways, he was, going to die early and no one was going to care, kind of an idea. So she ends up dying. But as part of her afterlife, she is now working for something called Project Scrooge, which is essentially every year they pick a new Scrooge. And this company kind of puts on this whole production on Christmas Eve with a lot of supernatural and fantasy elements, to make the person repent and, go be better people in their lives, essentially. She is now going to be playing the ghost of Christmas past. And I loved it. So where this picks up is that she's been doing this now for this is her 6th Christmas doing this. And she's like, yeah, it's a job, whatever, I'm not in the bad place. I'm, kind of a zombie in a way. Like, she's dead, but she's living in New York City, but she doesn't age, and she doesn't, it's all really kind of described very well in the book. And the Scrooge for this year is a boy who is not very different than how she was before she died. A 17-year-old boy who comes from money, and, he doesn't really care about his fellow human beings, and the story goes from there. The reason why this didn't get just a solid 3.5 star rating for me, and the reason it went to a 4, is because how imaginative it was. I really think that this was a great, great reimagining of A Christmas Carol. You see so many of these kind of stories. I have read so many retellings of A Christmas Carol where, it's a different person, but they all get visited by the ghosts of past, present, and future. It pretty much follows that very clear story arc. But this one, being the fact that she is the ghost of Christmas past, I thought was utterly delightful and absolutely deserved an extra 0.5 star rating. Again, YA, especially YA fantasy, is not generally my cup of tea. Now, I didn't really know how to categorize this because I would have felt it was a contemporary, even though she's dead. But I saw a lot of people on Goodreads listed as fantasy, so I did the same thing. That's why I gave it the fantasy rating, because it is. It's a very, very fantastical element, with the fact that she's dead and blah, blah, blah. And there's this organization that can tap into your brain and know what you're thinking and know your thoughts and can travel back in time and all these things. It was absolutely fantastic. So I know it's already after Christmas, and I don't know about you guys, but I tend to prefer my holiday books around the holidays. But if you want to, I highly recommend that you go ahead and maybe put this on your list for next year. It was really delightful, especially if you're a fan of A Christmas Carol the way I am. So, you might really, really enjoy it. So anyway, guys, that is all that I have for this video today. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below. Have you read any of these books, and what did you think about them? Or are there any now that you want to pick up now that I've talked about them? And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.